Hi everyone, welcome back to the Perkins Custom Swimbait channel. Appreciate everyone taking some time to watch today's video. Today's video, we've got two parts. So, number one, and I think the reason a lot of people probably tuned in today, is today we're going to get geared up for our Christmas giveaway. So, Christmas is the season where we celebrate Jesus' birth and God's greatest gift to us. So, to kind of go along with the Christmas giving, I want to give away a 6-inch Jethro glide bait. Specifically, this 6-inch Jethro glide bait. This is in the, we'll call it the dark purple gizzard. It's a little bit darker than just purple gizzard, but it's still purple gizzard. It's a 6-inch bait. It's weighted to slow sink. It comes with 2 Gamakatsu 1/0 treble hooks, and it's ready to go and to see some fish. So here is how you're eligible to win the bait. So number one, you've got to subscribe to the YouTube channel here. So down here below the video, you can see the little subscribe button. You hit that and it just takes care of it. It's completely free. It doesn't cost anything to enter. Number two, please hit the little thumbs up button. That likes the video. That's all that's doing. And then lastly, this is the very important part. Comment down below what state within the United States that you fish in. You don't have to tell me what part. You don't have to tell me what lake. I just would love to hear where everyone's from across the country as far as states go. And if you're in Canada, please put like your, province, Ontario, Alberta, so on. So I look forward to seeing where everyone's from. We are starting the competition today when this video drops at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, December the 10th. And it is going to run through Sunday, and I think that's December the 15th. At 11:59 p.m. So if you hit it on Monday at 12 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're running everything on Eastern Standard. I'm located here in Tennessee, so I've got to keep everything on Eastern Standard. I'm sorry you missed the giveaway. But I look forward to hearing where everyone's from. I really appreciate everyone that's tuned in this year. We have grown the channel significantly this year, and it's all because of you all. So this is me giving back, wanting to say thank you to everyone. I can't give everyone a bait, but I do want to make it to where everyone has a fair chance to be able to win the bait. So I look really forward to hearing where everyone's from, but now let's hop into the other side of the video. So I know everybody's been seeing some of these videos here recently that I've been putting out that are more, conventional fishing. Really haven't had a chance to go just a dedicated day of swimbait fishing. I belong to a Christian club here in East Tennessee, and we've had our last couple of tournaments for the season. We just concluded this past Saturday with our classic. So now that I finished up part of the club tournaments, I can kind of designate some of my winter fishing into trying to get back into the swim baits and trying to catch a giant. Because that's really what I really want to do, is to try to catch a true giant this winter going into the pre-spawn. So what I wanted to do is I want to talk about the winter baits that I plan on using to try to target that fish. Before I even go there, I want to talk about real quickly the lakes that I plan to use, because I think that's really important for everyone, because everyone is, across the country, different bodies of water, whether it be a river system, a natural lake, a lowland reservoir, and then myself. So I live on highland reservoirs. Our reservoirs go very deep. We have very steep bluff canyon walls, long tapering points, humps, island tops. So we've kind of got all that goes into our lakes. But because we are highland and our waters typically stay cooler, we are very blessed with having both a natural trout population as well as we do get trout stocks within the lakes. To the best of my knowledge, in most of the lakes, all three species of trout do exist: rainbow, lake trout, and brown trout. So I've got a pretty good shot if I try to match a trout as the forage. You know, we also have gizzard shad as well as threadfin, alewives, things like that. So what I'm really trying to do is gear up, you know, this is the forage that I'm trying to imitate. During those trout stocks, typically they're anywhere from probably 6 to about 12 inches. It just depends. Most of the time when they stock, they are stocking rainbows. I've actually caught a rainbow on one of the lakes, and it was about a 12-inch rainbow. You know, caught it on a crankbait, believe it or not, but that's what it was. So let's hop into the baits. I think I'm going to do things a little bit. We'll start things out with the smaller baits. We'll start smaller and we'll grow. And I'm going to try to do it. We'll mix it up: soft bait, hard bait, soft bait, hard bait. But we're going to start with the smallest baits because these baits catch fish everywhere. I think everyone across the country probably employs a Kitech. This is the Kitech Swing Impact Fat. I'm showing you chartreuse and blue, but to be honest, I've got my handful favorite colors. I'm sure you do also. Alabama rig, single swim bait, doesn't matter. These little baits will catch fish all winter long. I do keep them on the boat. Typically during the winter, if I'm really trying to target a really big fish, I'll have 2 setups rigged. I'll have an Alabama rig, and I did last year a dedicated video as to how I set up my Alabama rig, and I'll link that up here if you're interested in watching that, because I do set mine up with different size baits, different color schemes as to how I think that I really want to see as to how those bass are going to react that day. So I'll link that up here if you're interested in watching. But the other setup is I do have live scopes, so I typically will have a single swim bait on a spinning rod that I can just cast to fish if I need to. Now, the other side of this is that I also like casting big baits at those fish too. And so if I'm going out for a dedicated day of swim baiting, typically I don't even have these rigged. I don't take a spinning rod with me. Most people in my area would probably call me crazy to live in East Tennessee and you're not even taking a spinning rod. But, you know, to throw a bait that weighs 4 ounces, a spinning rod typically won't do it. However, I know for a fact that you can find them because Dad refused to throw a bait caster. So we have spinning rods that will throw, I want to say it, I know a 6-ounce bait. It's a surf rod. It's for ocean saltwater fishing. But we found them. But that's getting me sidetracked. The main key thing is using this. I try to use it with the Alabama rig because the A rig typically will trigger a bigger bite. And that's just what I'm looking for, is trying to get that one big bite. Absolutely, and I want to make that 100%, absolutely you can catch a giant on a 2.8 Kitech. I have several friends that their personal best has come on a 2.8 Kitech. Prior to me catching my 6.5 on the glide bait last year, my personal best came on a 3-inch Hazadong shad by Megabass. And that's another alternative too to the Kitech if you want something that's got a little bit more of a natural action, not quite as wide of a kick. Just depends on what you're needing, and if you're wanting to kind of separate yourself from some of the guys throwing the Kitechs, I really like the Hazadong. I typically will keep both on the boat, and if I'm running the Kitechs on, you know, my A-rig, I'll have that Hazadong on that single swim bait to cast at fish because it's just so natural. But yeah, all right, let's go into a hard bait. So I'm going to start with a crank down. And the reason I'm going to start with crank down, it depends on what I'm doing and what kind of crank downs we're needing, where are the fish holding. But right now, some of our lakes have still got quite a bit of color to them. They're not 100% clear yet. And they do typically clear off because just how deep and just clear the water stays most of the time year round. But right now, there has been a phenomenal crankbait bite in the area. As you all saw in that last video, we caught all of ours on a rock crawler, really shallow. So I'm wanting to try to throw the crank down some while we still got some dirty water and just see how well I can do and see how effective it is. So I've got 2 here built. I've got several, but primarily there's 2 different body styles that I'm using. This is the 6-inch Jethro. That's the body of this bait. I did add a second joint, so as you can tell, it's a 2 joint, and it has a lip in it, more of a square bill. This one is not that deep. This one I've got down to at least 15. And it's got a pretty good sized bill in it. So it will dive pretty deep. Both of them will. They'll get, this one will go anywhere between 5 to 9 feet on a good cast. And this is on like 12-pound P-line CXX. That's what I've been using for most of it. But my main thought here is, if I'm catching them on a rock crawler, I may not catch as many by upsizing, but I should still be able to catch some fish on it because they're clearly on a crankbait. And I know that because I was catching them on a crankbait. I do think that bite is probably slowing down just as the water is starting to cool, but that's probably just meaning they're pushing off a little bit deeper. They'll probably still hit it as long as that water stays a little bit dirty. But that's my first bait as far as the hard baits go. You know, areas, targeted areas, for me, it's going to be, you know, riprap, big chunk rock, basically just rock. I'm going to try my best to stay on rock, whether that be rocky points or big rocky flats. Maybe you'll find a ledge that flat is tapered quite a ways, and then it takes a real quick drop. That drop is going to be the area I target, trying to run that right on the ledge. But yeah, crank down would be number 2 on the list, and I'm going to throw it a lot. I know during the last year's wintertime video, I mentioned a crank down, and I threw it, but I don't think I gave it enough time. I also don't know, maybe the water, because it was so clear, just so clear, they just wouldn't hit it. But I'm going to give it some more time this year, see what happens. You know, you don't ever learn a new bait, you don't ever learn a new technique if you don't really put some time into it. So I've got to personally do that, and really just throw it some. So next up, we're going to switch to soft baits. Soft bait number 1, or number 2, I guess. This is the whale. This is the 6-inch whale. I really like a whale. I like a whale actually better than I do a mag draft for certain instances. Now, 2 parts. Number 1, if I'm trying to run this as a line through, I really like a whale as a line through swim bait. It is really, it's just got a great tail wag, I guess, tail wag, and then it's got a body shake that really works well in the water, and it really gets those fish going. This is the bait that I was referencing when I see them on the live scope and I'll sink it down. Typically, I'll have this rigged as a line through, and I will see those fish on the live scope. I'll throw over to them, sink it down, and then just bring it through them. Now, here's the kicker. You have got to add quite a few nail weights to this. So what ends up happening is as those fish go deeper, this bait's going to get harder and harder to fish this as a line through, because you just run out of room and run out of plastic to add nail weights. So I've loaded this thing up before, and I can get it to sink pretty good, but I will add in there, it gets really tough to try to get it down. There's just a lot of plastic that you're trying to sink with only a handful of nails that you can actually put in there. So an alternative to this, and I'm going to add this in here. I know this is like a 2-part for 2 soft baits or whatever, but it's going to be the 316 top hook. I really like the 316. You know, that is a really good bait. It's a very well-known 316 Rising Sun. This is the top hook version. I do throw the other version also, just the normal Rising Sun, but now it's closer to a wake bait. I'll throw it more early season when they're still up on like the flats feeding during the fall. But as they get into winter, I want something that can go deeper. Now, I will rig it both ways, as a belly and a top hook. It just depends on how the fish are positioned. If the fish are eating on the bottom, I'll rig it as a top hook and I'll slow roll it on the bottom. As the water is cooling down, but not super, super cold. Because this is still a paddle tail, and our water will get down into the 40s. Typically, we don't, I'm not gonna say never, but we typically don't have ice on the water. We don't get that cold here. We will get cold, but not usually that cold to where we start getting freezing ice on the water. But it's a good bait. I really like this bait. I kind of use these as a 1-2 punch. It just depends on how the fish are positioned. As you can definitely tell by the body size of the baits, the 316 is a lot wider. It's a bigger meal. You know, I've got this in trout, I've got it in dirty shad. I don't know how much color really matters. I do think color does have an effect, but if you're looking, you know, look at your water too and what you're looking for, and try to silhouette that with the sky and everything else. So just kind of looking at it from that point. All right, let's go over here. I guess everyone can probably guess what this bait's going to be, but this is the 7.5 Jethro. As you all know, I like throwing the bigger one. I really like throwing the big one, and the reason being is I feel like it gives me a bigger bite. And you know, I've got the gear that can throw it, so I'm not really intimidated by the weight or the size of the bait. Caught a lot of fish on these baits. I mean, as you can tell, this is kind of like a golden shiner. I got a little bit of a chartreuse hit on the tail. Just a very natural bait fish, green gizzard kind of color. So it's a pick your poison kind of deal there with color. I love playing with color, especially when I'm painting. But as far as like the bait giveaway, there have been more big fish caught on this color than any color that I build. Myself included has been caught on a purple gizzard. So I love to throw other colors, but if in doubt, go natural. You know, and a bait fish it looks like a gizzard shad. So the glides, where I'm going to throw those. So big thing with the glides, it's going to be a 2-part deal, and it's going to be slow. I figured that out this past weekend because I did throw it during the Classic. I didn't get them to eat it was my problem. They would come up and hit it, but they wouldn't eat it. And it was smallmouth. It was not largemouth. But it was so slow. You want that bait to just do a slow ass over top of their heads, and they'll come up and they'll smoke it. Now, I do add my little twitches. You know, you'll cut it. Basically do 4, 6, 8 handle turns real slow, and then I'll cut the reel real quick. 2 chops, 1, 2, and that bait will dart, and then it'll start its slow retrieve again. And that's what they're wanting, because the water's cooled down, so they're not, you know, like it was this spring when I was on that smallmouth bite with a glide bait. It was as hard as I could chop the reel, and you all remember me stripping line. I was stripping 10 feet of copolymer. That's why I went to braid, because I was stripping 10 foot of line every single hour, trying to get the stretch out of that line that I was imposing, because I was putting so much stretch into it because I was chopping it. They may hit that still this winter, but it's got to be the right day, and they're really aggressive and they're feeding high in the water column. But personally, I'm going to do that slow approach. I'm sure I'll try the chopping, the really hard chops. And I'm sure that there will be somebody in the comments that will tell me they have smoked them chopping it in the dead of winter time. I would be really curious if you're like down south a little bit farther and it's, or on a shallower lake too. So targeting like treetops, bluff walls with it, thinking about this glide bait not as a glide bait, think about it as a jerk bait. Where do I throw jerk baits? And that's typically the area that I'm going to put this glide bait. In the treetops, bluff walls, you know, your points. I've just had mixed. I've never really done great on glides on points, and that's just me. I've done great. I've done well on bluffs. I've done great on trees, but I've never really had a day where I could just say they were on points with a glide bait and I've done great. So I'm still learning the point deal. I know everybody says to throw them on points, so I'm still working on it, but I haven't caught a fish on a point yet. But there you go. Bluffs, treetops. All right. You can't go winter fishing without the most tried and true bait, probably for wintertime fishing. Everyone knows exactly what bait this is. This is probably the most well-known swim bait ever made, and that's the 8-inch Huddleston Deluxe. This one I've got Butch Brown rigged. I did the haywire twist on top. I didn't use crimps. This is a 1-aught. Yeah, that's a 1-aught. That's Swimbait Underground black, or, you know, matte black hook. I did go ahead and cut the gills in it. It's a good bait. I really like a Huddleston. It's a really good bait. They swim right. They do their job. This is an ROF 5, rate of fall 5. If I'm trying to swim it like earlier in the wintertime, trying to swim it like more parallel with these treetops that are only like 5 to 10 foot under the water, I'd rather have the rate of fall 5. Rate of fall 12 is when I'm wanting to put this on these big long flats that are deep, 40 foot of water, these big long points. I have caught fish on a Huddleston on points. So typically for me, the glide's going to be on my bluff walls, you know, when I'm wanting to do that. HUD is on my big flats that I'm wanting to drag it, or I'm wanting to fish on those points and try to bring this across the points. You know, I know Huddleston used to make a belly hanger that you could hang a treble off of, and I don't think they do that anymore. Even their rate of fall zeros, I don't know if they have that or not. I wish they did, because so many of my fish, they hit it going up, especially smallmouth. Smallmouth feed up. And that's one of the reasons I love a belly treble on like a line through, or like, you know, the mag drafts. The smallmouth really tend to feed up so much. You know, I think largemouth are a little bit different. I mean, they still feed up, but they just seem to be a little bit, they're very different than a smallmouth. And I'm curious to hear from everyone, you know, if you've had a similar situation. Like, have you had it to where, you know, and here's another one. Do you know any modifications that I can do to really add a belly slot? I mean, I guess maybe I could drill a hole, or start cutting into the harness. But I also don't want to go and kill a fish, especially if I go and hook like a giant. I don't really want to kill it, and I know if I get that treble in its gills, it's done for, and I don't want to kill a big fish. So I know I had a handful of people asking me about the Butch Brown rig, if I've caught many fish doing the Butch Brown rig. Still haven't really, I personally have not. I haven't caught any fish using the Butch Brown rig yet. I'm going to keep trying it for a little bit. Still interested in it. I love how stealthy it looks. I mean, you can barely see it. Yeah, if you get it against a, like against my cheek, you can kind of see the contrast to see the hook, but it's so stealthy. I really like that. But if in doubt, the tried and true jig hook on the 8-inch, it's a great bait. So, all right, last but not least, I am really wanting to see how big a bait I can get a fish to eat as far as the glide. So as many of you all know, I have caught fish on the big 12-inch wake baits. My dad and I did, so I know they'll eat them. But the big Omer trout glide. This one's painted up more like purple gizzard just because I know for a fact my fish will eat purple gizzard really well. I do have a little bit of extra weight hanging on that front treble. What that's doing is just trying to keep it a little bit lower in the water. I am trying to throw this on fluorocarbon to keep it down. But it is a slow bait. It's not a chopper. It is not by any means a chopper. It's designed to really create this big ass and pull these fish. So this is my point bait. I haven't caught any fish on it yet. Like I said, it's a big bait. I had to buy a rod to throw it. It's about 7 ounces. So it's about the same weight as like your Depths 250. Yeah, I would say it matches up with the Depths 250's weight pretty well. But this is my desire to catch a big one on this. It's not super like a thick bait. It's pretty narrow, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. So that's my wintertime baits. That's really what I'm going to plan on throwing. And it's okay for me to go out and not catch a fish. I know a lot of people I've talked to, I've got a lot of friends, like, they don't know how can you handle not going out and catching a fish. And it's, for me, it's kind of like I'm sacrificing a day to go out and try to catch a true giant. Absolutely, you can run across giants throwing a Kitech, throwing a crankbait, throwing a spinnerbait. But for me, I really want to catch it on Swimbait, a big bait. I'm looking for a big fish. And, for a largemouth in my area, if I can catch anything, I'd love to catch a double digit, a big 10 or 10 plus. I know they live here. I've heard too many stories about fish that live here, and I know that there's 7s and 8s here. There was a 7 caught about 3 weeks on one of the 3 lakes that I plan on fishing. And, I know they live here. Smallmouth, it would not surprise me if some of these lakes don't have the world record swimming in it somewhere. You just got to find it and catch it. But, to catch an 11, 12-pound smallmouth, that's going to be an aggressive eating fish. My Huddleston fish that I've caught was a smallmouth throwing an 8-inch trout. They eat them. It's got to be the right day, right conditions, and I completely... I know that for a fact, but just trying to put a big bait in front of a big fish and see what happens. So that's my game plan this winter. Include your state down there so that you're entered to win. Remember to subscribe and hit that like button. That way you get all 3 of the criteria. If you're also interested, you can follow down at the Facebook and Instagram social media sites. While you're putting your comment in as to what state you're from, drop me some of your favorite wintertime baits, and conventional or big baits, your preference. If you want to do both, that's great too, because I'd love to hear what everyone else is throwing. But remember, this is Christmas time. This is the holiday that we celebrate Jesus's birth. And above everything that I could ever tell you, that's the most important thing for you. So to meet Jesus and be saved, that's what this whole thing's about. I know I love to come on here and talk about big bait, swim bait fishing, but You know, that's the ultimate piece here. So if I don't get to talk to anyone, well, you'll see me next week because you'll be curious as to who won the giveaway. But I do want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, a very Happy New Year. And we got a lot of excitement going on. I've got a couple of new baits in the works. So be on the lookout there. It's gonna be some neat stuff. I'm trying a few different things. There's been some people in the comments giving me some ideas, so I've definitely tried to, you know, make some baits based on some of their recommendations and some of their thoughts. So I hope everyone has a very wonderful, safe, and blessed Christmas holiday. Great Happy New Year and a wonderful 2025 with a ton of big fish catches. So appreciate everyone watching. Remember to enter down below, and I'll see you in the next video where we announce our winner next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the Perkins Custom Swimbait YouTube channel. See you then.